The radio waves whisper their secrets. In the thin air above RAF Menwith Hill, on that cold Yorkshire morning in March 1996, as the massive white radomes stand like sleeping giants against the gray English sky, each one a silent sentinel, intercepting the invisible conversations of the world, flowing endlessly through the electromagnetic spectrum above. The technician adjusts his headset, watching streams of data cascade down multiple screens in the darkened control room, each line of code representing a fragment of someone's private life, captured from the airwaves. The intercept stations scattered across 5 continents hum with the constant activity of machines that never sleep, never rest, and never forget what they have heard. These installations, linked by the most sophisticated communication networks ever constructed, form the backbone of a surveillance system so vast and comprehensive that its very existence remained officially denied for decades. This is the story of Echelon, drawn from declassified files and public archives, the tale of how 5 allied nations built the most powerful eavesdropping network in human history, and how the revelation of its existence would shake the foundations of international relations, challenge the boundaries between national security and personal privacy, and expose the delicate balance between intelligence gathering and industrial espionage. The system that began as a wartime necessity evolved into something far more complex and controversial, reaching into the private communications of citizens, corporations, and governments across the globe. The roots of this electronic web stretch back to the smoking ruins of World War II, when Allied codebreakers first recognized that the age of signals intelligence had only just begun. In the basement offices of a nondescript building in London, on March 5, 1946, representatives from the British Government Communications Headquarters and the American Armed Forces Security Agency signed what would become known as the UKUSA Agreement, a document that would remain classified for more than 50 years. The agreement established the framework for intelligence sharing that would eventually grow into the most comprehensive surveillance partnership in history. The British delegation, led by experienced cryptographers who had spent the war years breaking Enigma codes and intercepting German communications, understood that the nature of warfare was changing. The Americans, fresh from their victories in the Pacific, where signals intelligence had proven decisive in battles from Midway to the Philippines, brought their own expertise and technological resources to the table. The two nations agreed to divide the world into spheres of intelligence responsibility, sharing not only the fruits of their intercepts, but also the methods and technologies needed to gather them. The original agreement covered only the 2 founding partners, but by 1948, Canada had joined the alliance, followed by Australia and New Zealand in 1956. These 5 nations would become known as the 5 Eyes, bound together by shared language, common legal traditions, and most importantly, a mutual agreement never to spy on each other's citizens. This gentleman's agreement would prove to be one of the most durable intelligence partnerships in history, surviving the Cold War, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and countless political changes in all 5 member nations. The early years of signals intelligence cooperation focused primarily on intercepting Soviet communications. As the Cold War settled into its long confrontation between East and West, British listening posts in Hong Kong monitored Chinese military communications, while American stations in Turkey tracked Soviet missile tests. Canadian facilities in the Arctic intercepted transpolar communications, and Australian stations in the Pacific kept watch on Asian military activities. New Zealand's geographic position made it ideal for monitoring South Pacific communications and serving as a relay point for intelligence gathered throughout the region. As technology advanced through the 1950s and 60s, the scope and sophistication of the intelligence gathering operation expanded dramatically. The development of satellite communications created new opportunities for interception, as messages that had once traveled through secure landlines now bounced through space where they could be captured by properly positioned receivers. The 5 Eyes nations began constructing massive ground stations equipped with dish antennas capable of intercepting satellite communications from hundreds or even thousands of miles away. The first major breakthrough came with the development of geosynchronous satellites, which remained fixed above specific points on Earth's surface and served as relay stations for international communications. Intelligence agencies quickly realized that by positioning their own receiving equipment correctly, they could intercept virtually any communication that passed through these satellites. The signals were often encrypted, but the Five Eyes nations pooled their cryptographic expertise to develop increasingly sophisticated methods for breaking the codes that protected sensitive communications. By the early 1970s, the network of intercept stations had grown to encompass the globe. RAF Menwith Hill in Yorkshire became the largest of these facilities, its distinctive white radomes housing some of the most advanced electronic surveillance equipment ever constructed. The facility processed communications intercepted from satellites covering Europe, Africa, and Western Asia, feeding the results to intelligence analysts in both Britain and the United States. Similar facilities operated at Sugar Grove in West Virginia, Yakima in Washington State, and dozens of other locations scattered across the Five Eyes nations and their territories. The system that emerged from this decades-long construction project was given the code name Echelon, though the name itself would remain classified for more than 20 years. Echelon represented a fundamental shift in the nature of intelligence gathering, moving from targeted interception of specific communications to mass collection of electronic traffic, followed by automated analysis to identify items of interest. The sheer volume of communications passing through the world's telecommunication networks had grown beyond the ability of human analysts to process manually, necessitating the development of computer systems capable of scanning millions of messages for specific keywords, phrases, or patterns. The technological requirements for such a system pushed the boundaries of computer science and telecommunications engineering. The intercept stations needed receivers sensitive enough to capture weak signals from satellites thousands of miles away, computers powerful enough to process the resulting data streams in real time, and communication networks capable of sharing the most promising intercepts among the Five Eyes partners within minutes of their capture. The system also required sophisticated methods for separating the wheat from the chaff, identifying which of the millions of intercepted messages contained intelligence valuable enough to warrant human analysis. The solution came in the form of what intelligence professionals called dictionary processing, a method of automated content analysis that used computer programs to scan intercepted communications for specific words, names, telephone numbers, or other identifiers of interest. Each of the Five Eyes nations maintained its own set of search terms, reflecting their particular intelligence priorities and requirements. The system could flag messages containing references to suspected terrorists, foreign military activities, diplomatic negotiations, or any other topic deemed worthy of attention by intelligence analysts. The efficiency of this approach was both its greatest strength and its most troubling characteristic. Echelon could process vast quantities of communications, traffic, identifying potentially valuable intelligence that might otherwise be lost in the flood of routine international communications. However, the same capability that made the system so effective against legitimate intelligence targets also made it a powerful tool for economic espionage, political surveillance, and violations of personal privacy on an unprecedented scale. The technical architecture of Echelon reflected the global reach of modern communications systems. Intercept stations, positioned at strategic locations around the world, captured communications from multiple sources, including international telephone calls, routed through satellite links, fax transmissions sent via commercial communications satellites, electronic mail messages passed through internet gateways, and telex communications used by businesses and government agencies. The system also intercepted communications from terrestrial microwave networks, fiber optic cables, and other communication infrastructure whenever technically feasible. Each intercept station fed its collected communications to central processing facilities, where computer systems performed the initial screening using dictionary techniques. Messages identified as potentially interesting were then forwarded to human analysts for detailed examination, while the vast majority of intercepted communications were discarded after processing. The system was designed to minimize the storage of irrelevant communications, while ensuring that potentially valuable intelligence was preserved and distributed to appropriate analysts within the Five Eyes community. The scale of Echelon's operations defied easy comprehension. Intelligence sources later suggested that the system processed millions of communications daily, scanning telephone calls, electronic messages, and data transmissions from virtually every country on Earth. The processing centers required massive computer installations and sophisticated software systems capable of handling multiple languages, character sets, and communication formats. The human resources required to operate the system included not only technical specialists and computer programmers, but also linguists, subject matter experts, and intelligence analysts capable of evaluating the significance of intercepted communications. The first public hint of Echelon's existence came not from government sources, but from investigative journalists and privacy advocates who began piecing together evidence of a global surveillance network during the 1980s. Duncan Campbell, a British investigative journalist, published articles in the New Statesman suggesting that the United States and its allies had constructed a worldwide system for intercepting international communications. Campbell's reporting, based on interviews with former intelligence personnel and analysis of publicly available documents, painted a picture of a surveillance network far more comprehensive than anything previously acknowledged by government officials. Campbell's investigations revealed that the system extended far beyond the traditional targets of signals intelligence, encompassing commercial communications, diplomatic traffic, and even the private conversations of ordinary citizens whose communications happened to be routed through monitored satellites or communication links. His reporting suggested that the intelligence agencies of the Five Eyes nations routinely shared information about each other's citizens, effectively circumventing legal restrictions on domestic surveillance by having foreign partners collect information that domestic agencies were prohibited from gathering directly. The implications of Campbell's revelations extended far beyond questions of privacy and civil liberties. If the system he described actually existed, it would represent a fundamental shift in the balance of power between nations, giving the Five Eyes Alliance unprecedented insight into the communications of governments, businesses, and individuals throughout the world. The competitive advantages available to nations with access to such a system would be enormous, encompassing not only traditional military and diplomatic intelligence, but also commercial and economic information of immense value. The breakthrough in public understanding of Echelon came in 1996, when the Scientific and Technological Options Assessment Office of the European Parliament commissioned a study of technologies used for political control. The study, titled An Appraisal of Technologies of Political Control, was prepared by a team of researchers, including Duncan Campbell, and provided the first detailed technical description of a global surveillance system matching the characteristics of Echelon. The S2A report, as it became known, described a network of intercept stations capable of monitoring international communications on a scale never before attempted. According to the S2A report, the system operated by intercepting communications from satellites, terrestrial microwave networks, fiber optic cables, and other communication infrastructure used for international traffic. The report estimated that the system processed millions of communications daily, using automated keyword scanning to identify items of potential intelligence value. The technical description provided in the report was sufficiently detailed to convince skeptical observers that such a system was not only possible, but likely already operational. The European Parliament study also raised disturbing questions about the potential misuse of such a surveillance system for economic espionage. The report cited specific cases where American companies had allegedly benefited from intelligence gathered through electronic surveillance of their foreign competitors. These cases included situations where knowledge of competitor bids, negotiating positions, or technical specifications had apparently provided decisive advantages in international business competitions worth billions of dollars. One of the most controversial examples involved the competition between the European Airbus Consortium and American aerospace companies for a $6 billion contract to supply aircraft to Saudi Arabia. According to intelligence sources cited in the STOA report, communications between Airbus representatives and Saudi officials were intercepted and analyzed, revealing details of bribes allegedly offered by European companies to secure the contract. This information was reportedly shared with American competitors, who used the intelligence to expose the corruption and ultimately win the contract for Boeing and McDonnell Douglas. Similar allegations surrounded other major international business competitions, including contracts for telecommunications equipment, infrastructure projects, and advanced technology systems. In each case, the pattern was similar. European or other foreign companies appeared to be at a disadvantage in competitions where American firms had access to intelligence about their competitors' strategies, pricing, or negotiating positions. The cumulative effect of these incidents suggested a systematic program of economic espionage that went far beyond the traditional boundaries of national security intelligence. The revelation of potential economic espionage through Echelon created a diplomatic crisis between the United States and its European allies. European businesses began to suspect that their communications were being monitored, not for legitimate national security purposes, but to provide competitive advantages to American companies. The accusations were particularly sensitive because they involved not only traditional adversaries, but also close allies who had previously trusted that their communications with American partners would remain confidential. The response from American intelligence agencies was carefully crafted to avoid direct confirmation or denial of Echelon's existence, while addressing the most serious allegations about economic espionage. Officials acknowledged that the United States gathered economic intelligence for national security purposes, particularly to monitor potential violations of economic sanctions or to identify corruption in international business transactions. However, they denied that intelligence collected through these programs was routinely shared with American companies to provide competitive advantages. The distinction between national security intelligence and commercial espionage proved difficult to maintain in practice. Information about foreign government policies, trade negotiations, or economic conditions clearly had intelligence value for national security purposes, but the same information could also provide substantial commercial advantages to domestic companies operating in international markets. The line between legitimate intelligence gathering and improper commercial espionage became increasingly blurred as global economic competition intensified and the boundaries between national security and economic security became less distinct. The controversy over Echelon reached a crescendo in the late 1990s as evidence of the system's existence became increasingly difficult to deny. The European Parliament launched a formal investigation into the global surveillance network, establishing a temporary committee to examine the evidence and determine the extent to which European interests were being compromised. The committee heard testimony from intelligence experts, privacy advocates, and former government officials who provided additional details about the system's capabilities and operations. Duncan Campbell testified before the European Parliament Committee, providing technical details about Echelon's operations based on his years of investigative research. Campbell described a system that intercepted communications on a massive scale, using sophisticated computer analysis to identify items of potential intelligence value. He estimated that the system processed several billion communications annually, though only a tiny fraction were ultimately reviewed by human analysts. The The automated filtering systems were capable of searching for specific names, telephone numbers, addresses, or keywords in dozens of languages, making it possible to identify communications of interest even in the massive volume of traffic processed daily. James Bamford, an American journalist who had written extensively about the National Security Agency, provided additional insights into the American side of the surveillance network. Bamford described the NSA as a much larger organization than the Central Intelligence Agency, with tens of thousands of employees and a budget of billions of dollars dedicated primarily to signals intelligence operations. According to Bamford, the NSA's mission had expanded far beyond its original focus on foreign military communications to encompass diplomatic, commercial, and even private communications that might contain information relevant to American national security interests. Nicky Hager, a New Zealand investigative journalist, testified about his country's participation in the Echelon network through facilities operated by the Government Communications Security Bureau. Hager's research revealed that New Zealand's intercept stations monitored communications throughout the South Pacific region, sharing the results with intelligence agencies in the other Four Eyes nations. His testimony provided valuable insights into how smaller nations participated in the global surveillance network, contributing intercept capabilities in exchange for access to intelligence gathered by their larger partners. The technical experts who testified before the European Parliament Committee painted a picture of a surveillance system that had evolved far beyond the capabilities originally envisioned by its creators. The system's ability to intercept and process communications had grown exponentially with advances in computer technology, satellite communications, and data analysis techniques. What had begun as a relatively simple system for intercepting specific foreign communications had evolved into a comprehensive surveillance network capable of monitoring virtually any electronic communication anywhere in the world. The committee's investigation revealed that Echelon operated through a network of intercept stations strategically positioned to capture communications from different regions of the world. The largest and most sophisticated of these facilities was RAF Menwith Hill in Yorkshire, which served as the primary European intercept station for the system. Menwith Hill's arrays of satellite dishes and electronic monitoring equipment could simultaneously intercept communications from dozens of satellites, processing the resulting data through some of the most advanced computer systems ever constructed. Similar facilities operated at other locations, including GCHQ Bude in Cornwall, which monitored transatlantic communications passing through fiber optic cables, Sugar Grove in West Virginia, which intercepted communications throughout the Americas, Yakima in Washington State, which covered Pacific communications, and Pine Gap in Australia, which monitored Asian and South Pacific traffic. Each facility was equipped with specialized receivers, computer systems, and communication links that allowed them to intercept, process, and share intelligence with partner agencies in real time. The global reach of the Echelon network extended far beyond the facilities located in the Five Eyes nations themselves. Intelligence sources suggested that the system also utilized intercept capabilities at diplomatic facilities, military bases, and other installations throughout the world. These facilities provided coverage of regions that could not be effectively monitored from the primary intercept stations, ensuring that the system's surveillance capabilities extended to virtually every corner of the globe. The operational procedures used by Echelon reflected the system's evolution from a relatively simple intercept capability to a sophisticated intelligence processing network. Communications intercepted by the various stations were automatically screened using dictionary systems that searched for specific keywords, names, or other identifiers of interest. Items flagged by these automated systems were then forwarded to human analysts for detailed examination and evaluation. The results of this analysis were shared among the Five Eyes partners through secure communication networks that allowed intelligence agencies to exchange information within hours of its collection. The keyword dictionaries used by Echelon represented one of the system's most sensitive operational aspects. Each of the Five Eyes nations maintained its own set of search terms, reflecting their particular intelligence priorities and requirements. These dictionaries included not only traditional intelligence targets, such as foreign military organizations and terrorist groups, but also economic and commercial entities whose communications might contain information valuable for national security purposes. The specific contents of these dictionaries remained highly classified, but intelligence sources suggested they encompassed thousands of individual terms and phrases, updated regularly to reflect changing intelligence priorities. The volume of communications processed by Echelon created enormous challenges for the intelligence agencies responsible for analyzing and distributing the results. The system generated massive quantities of potentially relevant intelligence, far more than could be thoroughly analyzed by the available human resources. This created a constant tension between the desire to cast as wide a net as possible and the practical limitations of processing and analyzing the intercepted communications effectively. The solution, adopted by Echelon operators, involved multiple layers of automated screening and human analysis designed to identify the most valuable intelligence while minimizing the resources devoted to irrelevant communications. The first layer consisted of the keyword dictionaries that flagged communications potentially containing information of interest. The second layer involved more sophisticated analysis techniques that evaluated the context and significance of flagged communications, prioritizing them for human review based on their apparent intelligence value. Only communications that survived both automated screening processes were forwarded to human analysts for detailed examination. The human analysts, responsible for evaluating Echelon intercepts, were highly trained specialists with expertise in specific regions, languages, or subject areas. These analysts reviewed intercepted communications to determine their significance, verify their authenticity, and prepare finished intelligence reports for distribution to policymakers and other intelligence consumers. The analysis process could take anywhere from minutes to weeks, depending on the complexity of the intelligence and the resources available for detailed examination. The distribution of intelligence, derived from Echelon, followed strict protocols designed to protect the sources and methods used to collect the information while ensuring that valuable intelligence reached appropriate consumers in a timely manner. Finished intelligence reports were carefully sanitized to remove references to specific intercept techniques or capabilities, and distribution was limited to officials with appropriate security clearances and a legitimate need to know the information. The most sensitive intelligence was sometimes distributed through special channels that provided additional security for information that could compromise ongoing operations if disclosed. The revelation of Echelon's existence created intense debate about the proper balance between national security requirements and personal privacy rights. Privacy advocates argued that the system represented an unprecedented intrusion into the private communications of innocent citizens whose conversations happened to be intercepted in the course of monitoring foreign targets. They warned that the system's capabilities could easily be abused for political surveillance, industrial espionage, or other improper purposes that had nothing to do with legitimate national security concerns. Intelligence officials responded that Echelon was an essential tool for protecting national security in an era when threats could emerge from anywhere in the world with little or no warning. They emphasized that the system was subject to legal oversight and operated under strict guidelines designed to prevent abuse while ensuring that legitimate intelligence requirements were met. The officials argued that the system's automated screening procedures minimized the invasion of privacy by ensuring that only communications containing potentially relevant intelligence were reviewed by human analysts. The legal framework governing Echelon operations varied among the Five Eyes nations, reflecting differences in constitutional traditions and privacy laws. In the United States, foreign intelligence surveillance was regulated primarily by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which required court approval for surveillance of American citizens, but allowed broader latitude for monitoring foreign communications. British operations were governed by the Intelligence Services Act and related legislation that provided oversight mechanisms while preserving the secrecy necessary for effective intelligence operations. The international character of Echelon created additional legal complexities because communications intercepted by one nation might contain information about citizens of partner countries. The Five Eyes Agreement included provisions for sharing intelligence about each other's citizens under specific circumstances, but these arrangements remained highly classified and their precise scope was not publicly known. Privacy advocates worried that these arrangements could be used to circumvent domestic restrictions on surveillance by having foreign partners collect information that domestic agencies were prohibited from gathering directly. The question of economic espionage through Echelon remained particularly controversial because it blurred the traditional boundaries between national security and commercial intelligence. Intelligence agencies argued that monitoring foreign economic activities was a legitimate function of national security intelligence, particularly when it involved potential violations of economic sanctions, corruption in international business transactions, or efforts by foreign governments to gain unfair competitive advantages. Critics responded that this rationale could justify almost any form of commercial surveillance, effectively destroying the distinction between national security and industrial espionage. The allegations of systematic economic espionage through Echelon were never definitively proven, in part because the classified nature of intelligence operations made it impossible to obtain direct evidence of improper information sharing. However, the pattern of American commercial successes in international competitions, where European companies had previously held advantages, suggested that something more than market forces might be involved. The timing of these successes, often following the interception of communications between European companies and their potential clients, raised suspicions that intelligence gathered through Echelon was being used for commercial purposes. The diplomatic consequences of the Echelon revelations extended far beyond the immediate controversy over potential economic espionage. The disclosure that the Five Eyes nations had constructed a global surveillance network without consulting their allies created resentment and suspicion that complicated other aspects of international cooperation. European leaders questioned whether they could trust their American partners with sensitive information, if that information might be used to disadvantage European companies in international competitions. The European Parliament's investigation concluded that Echelon did indeed exist and possessed the capabilities described by critics and investigative journalists. The Parliament's final report, issued in 2001, condemned the system's potential for abuse while acknowledging the legitimate national security interests that motivated its creation. The report called for stronger legal protections for personal privacy, better oversight of intelligence operations, and international agreements to prevent the misuse of surveillance systems for economic espionage. The European Parliament also recommended that European businesses and government agencies take steps to protect themselves against electronic surveillance by adopting stronger encryption methods, more secure communication practices, and better awareness of the risks posed by foreign intelligence services. These recommendations reflected a growing recognition that the technological capabilities revealed by the Echelon controversy represented a permanent change in the international security environment rather than a temporary problem that could be easily resolved through diplomatic negotiations. The impact of the Echelon revelations extended far beyond the immediate diplomatic and commercial controversies they generated. The disclosure that such a comprehensive surveillance system existed fundamentally changed public understanding of the technological capabilities available to modern intelligence agencies and the potential threats they posed to personal privacy and commercial confidentiality. The revelation that allied nations routinely intercepted and analyzed each other's communications challenged traditional assumptions about the boundaries of intelligence cooperation and the protection of sovereign communications. The technological advances that made Echelon possible continued to accelerate in the years following its public disclosure, creating even more sophisticated surveillance capabilities and new challenges for privacy protection. The growth of internet communications, mobile telephone networks, and digital data transmission provided intelligence agencies with access to unprecedented quantities of electronic communications, while simultaneously making it more difficult for individuals and organizations to protect their communications from interception. The legal and policy frameworks established to govern Echelon and similar surveillance systems struggled to keep pace with rapidly evolving technology and changing international security threats. The September 11th terrorist attacks on the United States created new pressures for expanded surveillance capabilities, while growing concerns about cybersecurity and economic espionage provided additional justifications for comprehensive electronic monitoring. The tension between security requirements and privacy rights that had characterized the original Echelon controversy intensified as new threats emerged and new surveillance technologies became available. The Five Eyes partnership that had created Echelon evolved and expanded in response to changing security challenges and technological opportunities. New intelligence sharing agreements were negotiated to cover emerging threats, such as international terrorism, organized crime, and cyber warfare, while the original Echelon capabilities were enhanced and updated to take advantage of advances in computing, telecommunications, and data analysis. The fundamental structure of the partnership remained intact, but its scope and capabilities continued to grow as security threats became more complex and international in character. The legacy of Echelon extends far beyond the specific surveillance capabilities it represented, encompassing broader questions about the role of intelligence agencies in democratic societies, the balance between security and privacy in an interconnected world, and the implications of technological advances for personal freedom and national sovereignty. The system demonstrated both the potential benefits and the inherent dangers of comprehensive electronic surveillance, providing valuable intelligence for national security purposes, while simultaneously creating unprecedented opportunities for abuse and overreach. The declassification of documents related to Echelon and similar surveillance programs has provided additional insights into the system's operations and the decision-making processes that guided its development. These documents reveal the gradual expansion of surveillance capabilities from narrowly focused foreign intelligence collection to comprehensive monitoring of international communications, driven by technological opportunities, changing security threats, and the institutional momentum of intelligence agencies seeking to maximize their collection capabilities. The public debate generated by the Echelon revelations contributed to broader discussions about the proper limits of government surveillance in democratic societies and the mechanisms needed to ensure that intelligence agencies operate within legal and constitutional boundaries. These discussions led to new oversight procedures, legal reforms, and policy changes designed to strengthen protections for personal privacy while preserving the intelligence capabilities necessary for national security. The international dimensions of Echelon highlighted the challenges of regulating surveillance systems that operate across national boundaries and involve multiple countries with different legal traditions and constitutional requirements. The lack of international agreements governing electronic surveillance created opportunities for intelligence agencies to exploit legal loopholes and jurisdictional gaps, while the classified nature of intelligence operations made it difficult for oversight bodies to monitor compliance with existing legal restrictions. The commercial implications of Echelon extended far beyond the specific cases of alleged economic espionage that initially generated controversy. The revelation that comprehensive electronic surveillance was technologically feasible and operationally practical prompted businesses and other organizations to reconsider their communication security practices and adopt stronger measures to protect confidential information. The development of more sophisticated encryption technologies, secure communication protocols, and counter-surveillance techniques reflected growing awareness of the risks posed by foreign intelligence services and other hostile actors. The Echelon story illustrates the complex relationship between technological capability and policy choice. In the development of intelligence systems, the technical ability to intercept and analyze communications on a global scale created opportunities for intelligence collection that were almost irresistible to national security agencies. But the use of these capabilities raised profound questions about their proper scope and limitations. The tension between what intelligence agencies could do and what they should do became a central theme in debates about surveillance policy and intelligence oversight. The international character of modern communications networks complicated efforts to establish clear boundaries for intelligence collection and analysis. Communications that originated in one country might be routed through satellites or cables located in another country before reaching their final destination, creating ambiguities about which nation's laws and regulations applied to their interception. The global reach of systems like Echelon made it difficult to apply traditional concepts of sovereignty and jurisdiction to electronic surveillance activities. The evolution of Echelon from a Cold War intelligence system focused primarily on Soviet communications to a comprehensive surveillance network capable of monitoring virtually any electronic communication anywhere in the world, reflected broader changes in the international security environment and the nature of intelligence requirements. The end of the Cold War eliminated many traditional intelligence targets, but created new challenges related to international terrorism, organized crime, economic espionage, and other transnational threats that required different collection and analysis capabilities. The technological infrastructure that supported Echelon represented one of the most ambitious engineering projects ever undertaken, requiring advances in satellite communications, computer processing, data storage, and network connectivity that pushed the boundaries of available technology. The system's development necessitated close cooperation between intelligence agencies, defense contractors, telecommunications companies, and research institutions, creating a complex web of relationships that extended far beyond the government agencies directly responsible for intelligence operations. The human resources required to operate Echelon encompassed not only the technical specialists and intelligence analysts directly involved in collection and analysis, but also the linguists, subject matter experts, and support personnel needed to process and evaluate the enormous quantities of intercepted communications. The system's global reach and 24-hour operational requirements created staffing challenges that required careful coordination among the Five Eyes partners to ensure adequate coverage of all priority targets and geographic regions. The security measures implemented to protect Echelon operations from foreign intelligence services and other hostile actors involved multiple layers of physical security, personnel screening, communication encryption, and operational security procedures. The system's value as an intelligence source made it an attractive target for foreign intelligence agencies seeking to understand its capabilities, identify its limitations, or disrupt its operations. The need to protect Echelon, while simultaneously using it to collect intelligence, created complex operational challenges that required constant attention and resources. The budgetary requirements for Echelon and related surveillance systems represented a significant portion of the intelligence budgets of the Five Eyes nations, encompassing not only the direct costs of equipment and personnel, but also the infrastructure needed to support global operations. The system's technical complexity and international scope required substantial investments in research and development, testing and evaluation, and ongoing maintenance and upgrades that continued throughout its operational lifetime. The impact of Echelon on international relations extended beyond the immediate controversy over potential economic espionage to encompass broader questions about trust, cooperation, and transparency among allied nations. The revelation that close allies had constructed a comprehensive surveillance system without consulting other friendly nations created resentment and suspicion that complicated other aspects of international cooperation, including trade negotiations, diplomatic initiatives, and security partnerships. The technological precedent established by Echelon influenced the development of subsequent surveillance systems and intelligence collection programs, demonstrating the feasibility of comprehensive electronic monitoring while highlighting the political and legal challenges associated with such capabilities. Later programs built upon the technical and operational lessons learned from Echelon, while attempting to address some of the criticisms and concerns generated by its public disclosure. The Echelon story represents a watershed moment in the history of intelligence and surveillance, marking the transition from targeted collection of specific communications to mass surveillance of global electronic traffic. The system's capabilities demonstrated both the potential benefits and the inherent risks of comprehensive electronic monitoring, providing valuable intelligence for national security purposes, while simultaneously creating unprecedented opportunities for abuse and overreach. As the last classified documents are filed away in the archives, and the final reports are submitted to oversight committees, the legacy of Echelon continues to influence debates about surveillance, privacy, and security in an interconnected world. The system that began as a Cold War intelligence tool evolved into something far more complex and controversial, revealing the challenges of balancing national security requirements with personal privacy rights and international cooperation in an age of global communications and transnational threats. The story of Echelon serves as a reminder that technological capabilities alone do not determine policy outcomes, but that the choices made about how to use those capabilities reflect deeper values and priorities about the kind of society we want to live in and the kind of world we want to create. The system's global reach and comprehensive surveillance capabilities represented both an unprecedented achievement in intelligence collection and a sobering demonstration of the potential for technology to transform the relationship between governments and citizens in ways that were never anticipated or explicitly approved by democratic institutions. The revelations about Echelon occurred at a crucial moment in history, when the end of the Cold War was creating new opportunities for international cooperation, while emerging threats, such as international terrorism and cyber warfare, were generating new requirements for intelligence collection and analysis. The system's exposure helped to shape public understanding of these challenges, while contributing to ongoing debates about the proper role of intelligence agencies in democratic societies and the international community. The technical capabilities demonstrated by Echelon continue to evolve and expand as new technologies create new opportunities for surveillance and intelligence collection. The fundamental questions raised by the system's existence about the balance between security and privacy, the limits of government authority, and the requirements for democratic oversight remain as relevant today as they were when the system was first exposed to public scrutiny. The Echelon story thus represents not just a historical episode, but an ongoing challenge for societies seeking to preserve both security and freedom in an interconnected and increasingly monitored world.